All
There you
right.
go. Good.
All right. Perfect. It's just a different viewpoint. All right. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Terry Eichel, and I work with the Interreligious Eco Justice Network. We are a faith-based environmental group in Connecticut. And together today with the Muslim Coalition of Connecticut and the Green Team of the New England Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church, we are presenting energy efficiency for houses of worship. I would actually like to open first with our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that Connecticut, Algonquin for land on the Tidal River, is the traditional home of Mohegans, Pequots, and many other tribes. We are grateful for our Native people's care for their home and will strive to preserve it for the next 7 generations. So this webinar is a continuation from earlier webinars this year that have been focused on energy efficiency. For 2023, the board of directors for IREJN decided we really wanted to focus on climate change with special attention on how climate change intersects with other issues of inequity or an injustice. And so we chose energy justice and energy efficiency and food justice. So energy efficiency is the topic for today, because energy efficiency can help us significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions, energy usage, energy costs, and air pollution. And as I always like to say, the greenest and cheapest energy is the energy that we are not using. So we are joined today by Daniel Robertson from Artis Energy and Bob Babcock from Connecticut Energy Solutions. Today we will discuss the Small Business Energy Advantage Program, the Micro Business Energy Advantage Program, and the new incentives for electric vehicle charging stations. After the presentation, we'll have a Q&A, so please put your questions in the chat and the question and answer. So I will now just hand this off to Daniel Robertson, who has got a great presentation for you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. First off, we'd like to thank the Muslim community and the Lutheran community for their sponsorship, and then Terry, you for your time. We wanted to give you a quick introduction. I'll introduce myself, then Bob will introduce himself. My name is Dan Robertson. I lead the Artis Energy Solutions team. We develop and implement energy efficiency projects, EV charging projects. We're part of the small business programs for Eversource and UI, and we also work with the other co-ops that are not UI or Eversource. So, Bob, you want to do a quick introduction?
Sure. Bob Babcock. First of all, thank everybody for coming in today. I own a company by the name of Connecticut Energy Solutions and work closely with Dan Robertson of Artis Energy Solutions. And also involved with EV charging stations as a consultant. And this will be an initial meeting to determine your goals and whether and how we can support your needs. Back to you, Dan.
Bob. Yeah, so we thought we put together, as Terry mentioned, we're going to focus on the small business program, which part of that is the micro business program that will apply to houses of worship through that program on the energy efficiency side. We'll walk you through the program. We'll walk you through benefits, what to ask yourself when you're looking at your place of worship. And then we'll also talk to you about the electric vehicle charging program and incentives available. There are incredible incentives out there. I think from an energy efficiency standpoint, an EV charging standpoint, that is not only great monetarily, but good for your worshipers, for everyone involved, communities in the state. So we'll talk through those. So I'm going to jump to this. So what is the Small Business Energy Efficiency Program? It is a program that basically empowers you to upgrade your systems in your building and make them more energy efficiency, such as your lighting, your HVAC, and other systems. And the state and the utilities will provide an incentive that will cover 25 to 80% of the cost. Bob's actually going to walk through an example. Whether you qualify for the small business program or the micro business program, which has even more benefits, it depends on your utility bill, your location, and just your usage and demand. So we work with you on that to determine which program that you qualify for. Also, for many of these programs, there's a no interest charge. Let's say the program, you have a project that is $30,000 and you get $20,000 of incentive and there's a $10,000 net. That can typically be put on your utility bill at no interest, and you pay for it monthly over a term that they figure out via a fancy calculation up to 60 months. But we'll show you an example for that. Why are the programs funded? There's a utility charge on your utility bill. It's a public benefit charge. It's something you pay into. It's something you should utilize and value that you can access. So why would you do this? You reduce your energy usage. You save money on your bill. We saw what happened in January of this year. It was just brutal increases. It was more on the supply side of the program, but there were very harsh increases to energy bills. You also lower your maintenance costs. If you have older systems, as many as you know, you have to maintain them. You're spending a ton of money on the systems. It's like some of our work vehicles that get older. We have to take them in the shop more often. It just gets to a point where it's better getting a new system. What's not calculated a lot of the time is what's the benefit to your worshipers, those that are speaking. If you have schools and education, heating and cooling and what that does, better visibility. There's so many great aspects that you can't capture in a spreadsheet. Morale, people are complaining about this and that. You put something in place, you invest in your community. It also helps the state. There's decarbonization goals. You know, we hear about global warming, but don't forget a lot of these emissions impact kids, especially those with asthma. There's a lot of tie into health benefits that are scientifically proven. And just to let you know, we've been a small business contractor from an artist perspective over 10 years. We've gone through a program where we bid, we're vetted, we're qualified as one of the customers in the program. So the utility, it's not just somebody selling you something, it's a utility going through. They do pre and post inspections. There's a heavy qualification package that you put together, almost like writing a thesis every 3 years to get in the program. And also it's based on feedback from customers. So that's kind of an overall view. I know it's a lot of information, and you can always contact Bob and he can walk you through the programs, and we have some links. But Bob wanted to walk through an actual example that is pretty straightforward that he brought together. This had to do with a church. So, and then I'll walk through this piece. Go ahead, Bob. You want to walk through this specific example?
Sure. Knowing or being familiar with the program, I proposed an idea to my church in Stony Creek, Connecticut, which is part of Branford, and an audit was done on the lighting and other electrical uses within our church. And to upgrade, the total project cost for the upgrade was $16,000. The incentive that we received from the energy supplier was $12,500. So the net to the church was $3,500. So that sounds great. So how do you pay for the $3,500? Monthly, we have on our bill a charge of $100 a month for 35 months. So what about the rest? Well, the rest of the story is that our monthly savings on our utility bill was $135 a month. So actually we were cash flow positive, $35 a month. And the irony is we saved $35 a month. We received $16,000 worth of project material. And the point is we reduced our maintenance costs, we reduced our carbon and our sustainability impact. So this is an example that I see all the time. The numbers aren't exactly like this, but the point of it is, this is about a 70% incentive to have this project take place in your house of worship. It makes sense, and it's a very smooth project. It is managed all the way through with Artis Energy Solutions. And the first thing is to make certain that you get an audit. That's the first step, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But to get an audit is no cost, and you can find out just how much of an incentive you can receive from the benefit of this program. Okay, Dan, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. And again, those benefits that you can't put in the table, they have a big impact. We've seen it in a lot of different locations, even businesses that we do, just the feedback from customers, from worshipers, from others. We've done gyms where it's just, it drives membership and just shows the investment. So from a house of worship, what have we seen typically that is applicable? We've seen the LED lighting upgrades. If you haven't done your LED lighting or upgraded LED lighting, that's a great area to focus on. Building insulation and weatherization, that's a big issue, especially if your house of worship is older. HVAC, this may not apply to some, but if you have rooftop units, there's ways to upgrade those and make those more efficient. Even adding programmable thermostats, you can control things and ensure you're not wasting energy when nobody is using the house of worship. And then we're seeing heat pumps for specific churches, especially if they have schools, replacing their heating and cooling systems. We do evaluation of that if that's a fit. And then, typical things like aerators, shower heads, kitchen areas, again, depending if it's a house of worship with a school or how you're set up, how you have your setup. So those are the typical areas that we see. So I think the next question is, how do I determine if this is a fit? Do I want to pursue this? I think there's questions that you have to ask yourself, and we ask ourselves too, because we try to put ourselves in your shoes and the shoes of our customers. My energy bill is too high and I want to reduce costs. If you're saying that, it's worth looking at. I have not upgraded to LED lighting. LED lighting incentives are expected to be reduced starting in 2025 because the building codes are more stringent. So you won't see the level of incentives unless you have control. So if you still haven't upgraded, it's a great time to do it. There are so many different color temp variations, so you can make it warmer, you can make it cooler. It's not like the LEDs were 5 or 10 years ago. Much, much better. I'm spending too much money on HVAC repairs. I have a service maintenance contract, and it seems like somebody's coming every, month, every few weeks, especially when it's too hot or too cold. Those things always seem to break down. I feel a draft in my building. The worshipers come in, you walk around, doors aren't open, and you just feel air coming through. And if everything is closed, usually insulation is not that great, especially with older houses of worship. So something to consider. You have people complaining, whether part of your staff, whether worshipers, that they're not feeling comfortable. And I think you get to a point where these are softer benefits, but they mean a lot in terms of, I think, leadership and how you are perceived by your customers, your members, your worshipers. You want to show you're listening to them if you have those issues, may support your mission, whether it's environmental, sustainable, or your theological doctrine. I think it's a great way to do that. And each of you has to figure out what that is. But these are some of the questions just to help you. I just wanted to stop. Were there any questions that came up, Terry, in the chat?
Not yet.
Okay.
But people generally have questions sort of like after.
No worries.
Yeah,
If anything
totally.
comes up, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, this is super great though.
Thank you. So we try to keep it simple. Both Bob and I have been customers and also, business owners. And what we find that sometimes these pitches are just too complex, too much marketing. So let's say you want to move forward, you want to learn more and things come up after this, just contact Bob. Terry will get you this information. Just reach out to him by email, by phone. He'll have a call. He'll usually do a web call beforehand because he's very respectful of your time. If you want to talk about your facility or even look at a Google Earth map or whatever it may be, just reach out to him. And it's pretty simple. Yeah, he has an initial conversation with you, has a discussion, and he'll be candid with you if he thinks it's a good opportunity or not. So, not every opportunity is great, and we're not going to do it if we don't think it's going to benefit you based on what you tell us. So that's the initial consultation. And then Bob works with us. We may have another call. We'll go to the site and do an assessment. It's a no-cost assessment. But we want to make sure that you are interested in doing it because we don't want to spend your time or our time and impede on what you're doing from a worship standpoint unless you feel it's a good fit. And Bob works with you to figure that out based on your goals. So we do an energy assessment. We look at different areas. We put everything together. We bundle it. We do all the paperwork, and then we send it to Eversource or UI. Again, if you're not part of Eversource or UI, let's say you're in Wallingford or you're in Norwich, there are still some other programs. They're different that apply. So we can help you with that also or have a conversation around that. But we submit that to the utility. They generate their letter of agreement. We put our verbiage on top of that, and we send it to you as a proposal, and Bob walks you through it. and it's detailed. It gives you a high level overview. And something that I don't think we put in the presentation, we guarantee parts and labor for a year. The worst thing, and I think we've all experienced it, is you have somebody do a project, you spend this money on it, 3 months later, somebody breaks down, they say, well, you're past your warranty. So we do it for a year. And that's also part of the program, but we do that for all our projects. So you're covered. After that, for example, with lighting, there's typically 5 or 10-year warranty. So at least you're covered on the equipment. But with a lot of this equipment that's electronic, you get most of the failure rate early on, and then you're usually good to go further on. So it's a turnkey program. Bob will consult with you. We'll develop the project. We'll install it. We want you to have a great experience. We want it to mainly fit your goals, but we also want you to be a reference. We're like a soccer team. You know, you're our fans. If we do a great job for you, you're going to support us, and it's a two-way relationship. So it's very important to us. So it's pretty simple. So I want to talk to you about the EV charging. EV charging incentives came out last year. The DC fast charging incentives, those are for the huge build out along travel corridors. Those have all been used up in the state. There's federal incentives, but they're typically not applicable in a community where you're looking to just get a little bit more of a charge, or you're parked there for a longer period of time. So there are level 2 charging incentives that are $20,000 to $40,000, depending on whether you're in an economic justice or underserved community, which is determined by your address, or just a standard community. So we help you develop those projects. Those chargers will get you 20 to 60 miles of range per hour, depending on what rated charger you have, which depends on your building power, what we can put in, what you would like to do, what you like to offer, plus the vehicle, which has a different level 2 charging rating than a DC fast charging rating. But I think the big takeaway, $20,000 to $40,000 of incentives will help you develop projects. Multifamily is run out, but it's still available for houses of worship. So if you keep your station public 24/7, you actually only have to install 2 ports to qualify for the incentives. If you want to make it private, you have to install 4 ports, 4 charging ports that can charge 4 cars simultaneously. So we can help you with that. There's incentives available to really get you going here. So like we did with energy efficiency, the question is, why do you do that? You might say, I don't see that many EVs on the road. Well, what you saw this year is one of Tesla's models was the #1 selling car in the world in the Q1 of the year globally. It was an EV for the first time. There's utility incentives that are available, such as with everything. If everybody has an EV, there's not going to be as many incentives because chargers have to be built. But it's just a good way to get started early, get the chargers in. The number of drivers is increasing, buyers is increasing. When somebody goes to an app, they're going to see the location of the charger, let's say the cost, let's say it's during non-worshiping hours, you want to make revenue, and they can go park there, and they'll see availability. So our marketing person said, hey, the app puts you on the map, and we really believe that. And I think it's a good way, especially if you have drivers in your community, in your congregation, or worshipers, to show them what you're doing here and just show that leadership that I know you all have with your missions and supporting your sustainability goals. Again, the tailpipe emissions are a big deal, especially in terms of health benefits by eliminating those. So there's a lot to go here. There's a lot of cars out there. It's a good chance for you to take a leadership role, and the incentives are excellent. So again, I think it's the same thing where you contact Bob. We probably do a little bit more of a detailed review with you on the EV charging. We go through your goals. We'll go through on a web call and just put your address in the map, see what incentives you qualify for. We'll also use Google Earth to get a feel for where you want to put the chargers. We do all this before a site visit. Again, it does save us resources, but we find even with our customers, they're too busy. They have programs and everything they have for their church. There's so many things going on around different holidays and occasions. We try to simplify this for you and streamline it. And then the process is basically the same, that we have the initial call, which is a little more detailed. We go to site, we develop the project, we figure out what the incentives are, and then we apply for them after you sign the contract and move forward. Again, it's a no charge first assessment, but we want to make sure that it is a fit early on. That's why we try to have these conversations to go, hey, I think it makes sense for us to move forward, and then we develop the proposal and go from there. So that's for the EV side. I think sometimes this seems fluffy, but I think it's very important that Bob and I want to convey this to each of you. I mean, we treat all our customers with respect. We honor your traditions. We don't know, especially, in construction, we coach our team when they go in, especially with a religious organization, house of worship, conduct. If you have special rules, we want to make sure we follow those. We want to respect your times of prayer. We want to make sure that for older buildings, especially, we see this probably more with churches, with the older churches, is we have to be very careful. There's basements in churches, the way we do our lifts. We have to do scaffolding. We're very sensitive to that, especially a lot of the beautiful architecture that you see with churches or mosques and other that we want to be very careful with, and we plan around your schedule. We want to have a successful collaboration, as we talked about. It's a two-way street. And when issues come up, as they do, we're not perfect, we're visible. We work with you to resolve those. And then we handle all the paperwork, which is save you a lot of the time, especially the first time you do a lot of these applications and closeouts. It takes a lot of time. Again, program specific, I would definitely, if you haven't upgraded for LEDs, that's such a low ceiling positive impact for you. You should get it done before the incentives go away, and just get a plan for 2024. If you combine it, if you have HVAC upgrades and other things, you can get more incentive. If you're looking at heat pumps, so there are a lot of things there. The level 2 EV charger, I got to turn my sensors on here. I'm sitting too closely, too still. Level 2 charging incentives. They're running out for some of the programs that are available. They go through the 2024 cycle, renew in 2025. If you're interested, let's work together. Let's get those applications in. And then we've got a few resources listed. I think Bob, again, keep it simple. He's your first contact to reach out to. You can, the energy efficiency program, we've got that reference for you. You can go to our website that we've just, redone a couple months ago. It has different links, information to do that. So that's kind of it in a nutshell for us. I mean, we're really here to benefit you. And if we can benefit you, I think we can both be successful and support your mission. So thank you. And we're open to questions now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really wanted to highlight a couple of things too, is when Dan talked about air pollution and this being a way to reduce it, he's absolutely right. Connecticut actually is out of attainment for federal air quality standards. So everything that we can do to reduce our emissions, whether it's from our building emissions or from transportation through electric vehicles, is something we should do. And actually, in terms of electric vehicles, IREJN has been very involved in working to get these new proposed regulations adopted by the state. And so I'm sort of up to my eyebrows in electric vehicle, the market currently right now, and it really is expanding. We're actually, as a state, we're ahead of our goals for electric vehicle adoption. And once these regulations are adopted, hopefully that's going to really see an increase in how many electric vehicles are here in Connecticut. So the idea that we can incentivize putting charging stations in at the houses of worship is great, because it's a perfect opportunity right now to get ahead of a market trend that is already happening. Manufacturers are already producing more electric vehicles. The battery technology is improving every single year. So it's definitely the wave of the future. So that's great. The other thing is that I had heard initially from a vendor, which I can't remember, that the micro business program might be ending. And I was just told yesterday, nope, the micro business program is continuing and it's going to be flush, which is great, because we have had, IREJN has helped many congregations this year with the small business and specifically the micro business program, and people are so happy. They're so happy with the savings. They're so happy with their, reduced carbon footprint, their reduced emissions, and just the incredible value it brings for houses of worship. So that's great. Actually, one question that I had about the electric vehicle charging, it said based on location. Is that based on like there are more incentives in environmental justice communities? Is it that type of?
Correct, yes, yeah.
Yes.
Great. I mean, we certainly have many congregations in there, and so is that map based on Connecticut's EJ community map, or is that a federal designation?
Tell you what, I might pull it up for you if I can here for a second.
Sure.
It's ended. But for the micro business program that you mentioned, it's a great point. So Bob gave an example. I believe his church was a micro business.
Yes.
They'll offer 16,000 of incentives up to a $20,000 project if you qualify. If it's HVAC, there are some different conditions, but it's incredible. And then they'll put the rest, no interest, on your utility bill.
Yeah. The experience that congregations have had with micro business has been so great. And as Dan just said, up to a $20,000 project cost, they will instantly rebate 80%. So that's 16,000. And then the remainder is just financed on your bill. So it could be, obviously it could be $4,000, and it could also be the same situation that Bob had where they just do a monthly payment that is more than paid for by your energy savings. So it's based on, this is how the qualification is based on usage. So that's why it's perfect for houses of worship, because most houses of worship are only open a few days a week, or, maybe they're limited hours every day, so maybe 9 to 1, but it's based on usage. So a lot of houses of worship qualify, so it's really perfect for them. And there is still funding in that program, so you should definitely get signed up for it if you have not already. And then for congregations that have actually done the small business or the micro business, the reason I want to start really focusing on the electric vehicle is that's sort of the next level of energy efficiency incentives that you can take advantage of. So it looks like we're looking at the environmental justice communities in Connecticut.
Right.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We just plug in your address to figure out if you apply. So we'll do our business address here. And it's not just it doesn't just consider areas or typical cities that might, it kind of falls on income, a lot of different factors that are in there.
Sure.
But we've seen even projects in Stamford, Connecticut, believe it or not, that might fall in an area that needs economic development. So those projects are qualified. So just because you feel that you're in a location that may not qualify, you've got to actually put the address in and take a look. And we can
for sure. Yeah, it's the way they look at EJ communities, you're correct. It's economic factors, it's health factors, it's air quality, all those sorts of things. So it's definitely worth putting the address in to find out if a house of worship qualifies. So Jeff had a question, and he wanted to know if are energy conserving windows included in the program?
They are included, but just it's a very high payback. So I think if it's windows that are failing, they are definitely included in the program. You'll get incentives. It just won't be at the level that was spoken about. We just did a project that was, a couple $100,000 we're proposing, and it has windows insulation. You'll get some incentives, but they'll just be at a lower level. And, they might cover 10% or 15%. So it's a pretty big out of pocket still, but it is included in the program.
Right.
And we did a webinar with the Energized Connecticut heat pump team back in June. And when I send out my follow-up with this recording, I will send out the recording for that as well, so people can learn more about the heat pump program. And then following that, a few weeks after that one, we did one on solar for houses of worship. So, but I have to say, energy efficiency, this level program is really where you start. This has the biggest return on investment, the biggest immediate payback. Honestly, if you haven't done like the LEDs and sort of these basic energy efficiency measures, this is really where you get started, and then you have enough savings and, quite frankly, enough momentum. As we all know, in houses of worship, you usually have a couple people that are really gung-ho and some people that need a little bit more convincing. But when they see the savings and the impact that the initial program has, and they're much more willing to take a look at some of the deeper measures that are then available.
And along with that, Terry, to to find out where you are and what your benefits would be specifically for your house of worship, there is no charge for that. So you can find that out without any obligation. So it's a no-brainer, in fact, that you don't have to wonder if you can benefit from this. Just get the assessment, get the audit, and you'll know. So we recommend people, if they're wondering and not sure, get the audit, and you'll find out the facts at no charge.
Right. Sharon has a question for the EJ community. Is the data based on the whole city or specifically the more affected areas? Example, the northern border is a higher income area and the southern far more adversely affected, such as a concentration of polluters and low income. I mean, Dan probably has a good answer for this too, but I know in my town of Preston, we have an EJ section that is close to the incinerator, but not all of the town is considered an EJ area. So I think that is why putting the address in is really important, because you could be adjacent but not in it, or more areas. I mean, if you come to this little rural town of Preston, you wouldn't think any of it was an environmental justice community, but we do have an incinerator, so those folks breathe that air.
Well, Terry, that was well put. No, this is interesting. If you go to the website, you can actually see kind of the description of what's included. It's pretty confusing. I actually reached out because the map changed when we had a project go last year, and it changes once a year. So I reached out. I believe it's a PhD at Yale, and she walked me through how the whole thing is set up. It's pretty complicated, but I think this provides a good general overview if you go to the map and click on the information.
Right.
And it highlights many of the things that Terry talked about. Some of this is just complicated when they figure these per zip code and do that. The state does the distressed towns and cities that fall under that, but then the rest of it is based kind of on a federal census on how they go about that. So I've spent a lot of time interpreting that. It is not straightforward, but this is, I think, a very succinct explanation, at least to start from a high level.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so basically it's always worth it to just put the address in.
Yeah, just type the address. So this is an example I typed in. Do you see my screen?
I do. So Sharon, I will, when I do my follow-up, I will send, she said, please give us a link for this map. I will definitely give you the link for the map when I do the follow-up. So, but go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, so I want to give you an example. This is in Stanford. We did an office building here with a lighting upgrade, but they did EV stations. And you wouldn't think that this is an economic justice community or qualifies, but they happen to be in this shading. And you got to kind of go in and out of the map because the shading will change, but they qualified. And so it does depend on a variety of factors. So put the address in. That's
well, absolutely. People would be shocked at the economic situations of some of the folks living in Greenwich and Stamford and those sort of southwestern towns. But the fact of the matter is there is obviously very, very high levels of extreme wealth, but there's also fairly surprising levels of poverty and economic challenges as well in those areas. And not for nothing, Fairfield County, New Haven County, Middlesex County, and New London County all receive Fs from the American Lung Association in air quality. And I think it's New Haven, Middlesex, and Fairfield that are actually in severe non-attainment for federal air quality standards from the federal government, from the EPA. So that definitely impacts that sort of thing as well.
So Terry, speaking of that, we just started this because we usually install EV stations, and work with houses of worship, customers, and so on. But if you're an EV driver and you want to see an EV station somewhere, we're trying to develop support with a grassroots campaign. So we have an EV affiliate program that we just rolled out. And we're trying to attend the EV meetings because I think it's important, even for a house of worship, you want to have people come to you and say, hey, I drive an EV, I'd like to see this. So you feel the demand, because you don't see it as much unless you start heading towards New York City and then you see a ton of EVs.
Right. And I will say I have one, and it's a great car, very reliable, very affordable to maintain. I hope that we see more chargers, so that's awesome. Can you actually explain a little bit more about the EV charging incentives? Can you just review that a tiny bit? They're now no longer available for multifamily, but they are for houses of worship. Do houses of worship need 2 chargers as long as they are available for public use, and 4 if they were only available for private use? Is that
Yeah, correct. So
okay?
the state
I got
is
it.
trying to expand availability of EV chargers. So if it's private, they require you to have 4 because you're not opening it up to the public. So you have to have 2 ports at least if if you have it open to public and it's 24/7. So they're giving you a benefit and lowering the bar. So it's almost like a lot of these stations almost look like a gas pump where you have a charger on each side. And you can charge 2 cars simultaneously. And it's put in the middle of your parking lot between 2 parking spaces, for example. But it's 2 ports for public to qualify.
And
For
I mean, I
house
would imagine houses of worship
public.
would be public ports.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the
And
goal.
candidly, we've seen this has been interesting. We've had a couple churches reach out to us and we've put proposals together and they're actually looking at the revenue aspect also. And I'm trying to say, we send them calculators. I go, look, you're going to see more cars, but that should be part of your consideration that's going to increase as you go on. But your parishioners and who you have driving should drive this, putting it on the map, I think right now is important. And you will have other drivers charge. But no, it's been interesting. I think it's been looking as a revenue perspective to benefit the parishioners and to upgrade and do what they do. So
Great. How long actually, for what is the time frame? So if say someone wants to do the small business or the micro business, what's the time frame from when they call Bob to when sort of things are completed? What's the lead time right now?
I'd say I would probably give it 4 months. I could say some projects finish in a month or 2 if it's just simple lighting, because there's a few things that happen. The project is you have the initial calls, you schedule somebody to site, that takes a couple weeks. We get everything back, we do it internal and get it ready to submit the utility. That's 2 weeks. Say there's a month, it takes the utility a month to get back. We get it to our customer review and sign. That might take 2 to 4 weeks. Then we order equipment. So you kind of see probably in that 3 to 6 month range. It can go faster, but each of the steps seems to take more time. And then it depends on utility turnaround, our turnaround, your availability. You might have to review it with other leaders within your house of worship organization. So that all figures into it. So I'd say probably 4 to 6 months is typical from start to end. Contact can be faster.
So Sharon wanted to know, what would be the average yearly anticipated income from an EV charger? Who maintains the chargers, and how after hours are fees paid? How are fees paid after hours? I think is what that.
So those are great questions. So how much revenue you earn depends on how many people are going to charge. So you go, how do you determine that? We have a calculator we use conservative numbers we get to you for you to kind of take a look at it. Because it'd be easy to say, hey, the charger is going to be in use for 90% and you have this incredible revenue and payback. We'll figure, 20, 30% or whatever it may be, unless it's a hotel or something else or a retail environment. So we get you a calculator. We'll give you our perspective based on what we see in the marketplace. And then we let you play with the calculator and put the numbers in. And that goes on your utility bill. What's your total effective utility bill cost? You put that in the calculator. How many hours? We'll put that in there, but you can change that. And then there's software that you have to have for 5 years of the EV charger. You can either pay for it annually or do it 5 years up front, usually get a discount. And that allows you to set up pricing plans for different users. It allows usually the EV manufacturers will do a remote diagnosis if the charger goes down or needs to be rebooted. So that's put in place. I thought the second question was excellent. A big problem with EV chargers is downtime.
Right.
Their downtime is about 20%. So how do you eliminate that? I recommend getting the full extended warranty with labor and parts, whether you pay for it annually or prepaid. For utility incentives, they require the charger be maintained, so you don't have to get it. It's optional, but it's just smart. It's like you buy a big TV at Best Buy or make a big purchase. You want to protect it. And besides, if it goes down and you don't have protection and you might not have the funding, it's just a bad look where we're using money that we all put in the programs to keep them up. So the networking plan and extended warranty is just highly recommended. If that answered the question, did that answer your question?
Sharon, did that answer the question? I think those were excellent questions, and certainly probably questions that other folks would have as well. So that's great. Terrific. Oh wait, I think there's another. Sharon said yes, thank you. Anyway, does anyone have any other questions about the micro business, about the small business? Now, the programs we've been talking about today have been for houses of worship or small businesses. So by the way, if you or someone you know has a small business, these programs are also applicable. It's just that houses of worship fall under the small business program. There are also programs available for residents in their homes, in single family homes, apartments. It's called the Home Energy Solutions Program. There is also an income eligible version that is for folks who qualify on an income level. We're doing a webinar on that on November 16th with Devin Williamson from Energize, CT, and Eversource. So that's another critical way to reduce energy, save money, save the planet, all that stuff. And for houses of worship too, helping spread the word about weatherizing homes is also a real justice issue, because I know we have, part of the reason we started looking at energy efficiency was that we understood that it really intersected with a lot of other issues like quality of housing and utility costs, and how utility costs can lead people to have to choose between paying for food and paying their electric bill or paying their rent or mortgage, so we were looking at these things. So if you are from a faith community, house of worship, consider attending this webinar on the home energy program with an eye towards how you could help your community members in your faith community, but also your overall community, access the programs to help them to improve their quality of life, to reduce their energy costs and that sort of thing, so that's coming up on November 16th. It's just a little plug for that. Let me see if there's any other questions that we've got. There's also
Terry, I would
go
say,
ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
We work with a large customers. They have great incentives also. It's not on-bill financing, but we do a lot of work with aeronautical customers, different industries. So if you have membership that has that retail stores, there's so many different programs out there, and we'll help match you with any of those. We're speaking small, micro, EV, but there's a lot of different programs out there we can help you with. Even renewables, if you need help, we might get one of our partners to support you. You're seeing backup batteries to lower demand for these larger industrial facilities. So there's a lot out there. So if you have questions, even if we don't have the answer, reach out to Bob and we can help you with that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Sharon had, for a church which enters the program for the LEDs or the other energy programs, and some untoward event happens and the church closes, does this affect the grant? Like, would they still, I'd imagine they would still owe. What happens if your church closes and you still have a payment to the utilities for this?
Usually it would I don't know the answer to that question. First of all, that's an interesting question. I would say we've seen transfers of ownership. The monthly payment transfers to the other owner is how it happens. So it would probably go to whoever owns that building and uses that land. Would pick that up if you don't own that land. If you just, let's say you own the land and you just, or you're not just a tenant and you own the facility and you just abandon it. I mean, there's got to be an owner that would pick it up, I would assume, but it would transfer to them. But
yeah,
I can look at it more specifically. I don't know the specifics of that.
It is an interesting question, because most of the time when I see a church close or a synagogue or a mosque, they're actually usually not closing fully. They're generally merging with another congregation. So I would imagine the cost would be sort of part of the merger, but I guess I'm not super sure. So that's an interesting question.
If it's a merger or a transfer, we had that with a business actually that bought another business and it just transferred to the new business owner.
Mm-hmm. Right, that makes sense.
Some of what you said, but if you have more specific questions, we can look at it. It will transfer to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But usually if somebody has it, you're able to justify the lower costs and, kind of what Bob showed, where you're cash flow positive. Right. That one was incredible for incentives, but you see a lot of them that are cash flow positive. you know,
Oh,
fairly
absolutely.
quickly and low payback. So
Yes, that has been our experience with many houses of worship throughout Connecticut, is they're cash flow positive and um, very pleased and looking a lot of them, once they do that, they start looking at other areas, avenues, which is great. We actually also, we have, IREJN has a small grant program for houses of worship, $1,000 to put towards energy efficiency work at your house of worship. You do have to like do the actual program through a contracted vendor. You can't like go out and buy LED light bulbs and then install them yourself. It needs to be through the small business program. But we do have, you know, $10,000 and $1,000 grants to give out. We're prioritizing environmental justice communities, but I think we'll probably have room for folks that aren't in EJ communities as well. So if you're a house of worship that's interested in, you know, $1,000 isn't a ton of money, but it's also something. And if you're working to pay off a small $3,000 or $4,000 payment, then that actually can kind of get you a quarter of the way there almost. So.
yeah, a couple other things. If you're involved in like a New England-based chapter, we work in Massachusetts. We're becoming part of that small business program. We do work in Central Hudson. We try to stay in those areas, but if there's a broader scope, we're pretty engaged with those EV programs and energy efficiency programs, so we can help you there if that comes up.
Great. That is terrific. Do we have any other questions? You know, I want to tell you one more event that's coming up on Thursday for folks. If you're in the Hartford area, there's an environmental justice forum and conversation that's going to specifically revolve around trash and how we deal with our waste in Connecticut. So that is going to be Thursday, November 9th at 7 p.m. At the Emmanuel Congregational Church in Hartford. So I'll send that information out too in my little follow-up. And also actually Third Act is doing their launch on Tuesday, November 14th via Zoom at 7 p.m. I can also dig up that information. Third Act is Bill McKibben's latest grassroots project for people 60 years and older. So it's a really great demographic to get engaged with and advocate with. So we're going to be participating in that launch and hope there'll be a lot of folks to join us for that. So let me see if there are any other questions on this lovely Saturday. No, I think that's good. So any other, you know, honestly, Dan, Bob, thank you so much for joining us. I will put this up on our YouTube channel. I'll send it out to everyone who registered, as well as a lot of other folks that have expressed interest in these programs, but I don't think have necessarily gone through. We've gotten, I mean, at this point, IREJN has helped probably close to 60 congregations this year access these programs, but our goal is 100, so 40 more to go. So anyway, so I'll be doing a lot of follow-up in the next few weeks with everyone. If there are no other questions, then I think we could probably wrap up. Dan, Bob, thank you so much. Did you want to say anything else?
Yeah, we just wanted to thank everybody for their attendance on a Saturday and for Terry to set this up and the sponsors and everybody that joined. So thank you very much. We're here to help you and, you know, wish the best for your families and friends. Be healthy, happy, and thank you, everybody. And have a great weekend.
Thank you. And thank you for the great presentation. That was super clear. That's really great. Bob, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank
Take
you.
care,
all right,
everybody.
have
Thank
a
you.
great day.
Have a great day. Thank you.